Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Chapter 21. What the hell? School play so big. Chu Huan, the student of the twin soul. Does he have any problems? Shu Hongwen asked. Fu Wenbo spoke like a bead. This kid has awakened his soul skill. It's different from other students. Shu Hongwen said casually. It's just awakened, and it's still an awakened auxiliary device soul. Even if you enter a 1-star awakened apprentice, the students arranged in it are also 5-star awakened apprentices. What's there to worry about? You know what? This kid's awakened tool soul skills are a bit wicked, and students of 5-star awakened apprentices may not be able to withstand that kid's tool soul skills. Hearing this, Shu Hongwen was startled. A 1-star awakened apprentice's tool soul skill can hurt a 5-star awakened apprentice. What tool soul skill did this Chu Huan awaken? Fu Wenbo. Why are you 100,000? There's so much nonsense, hurry up. Aware that Fu Wenbo's tone was wrong, Shu Hongwen was no longer as indifferent as before, and rushed into the training hall in a flash. During the action, he even used his soul power to stimulate his muscles to increase the speed. A few seconds later, at full speed, Shu Hongwen had already seen classroom 103. Chu Huan, who Fu Wenbo was talking about just now, was standing at the door of the classroom. And the alloy door at the door of classroom 103 has been closed for the most part. Chu Huan, hurry up. Upon discovering this scene, Shu Hongwen hurriedly shouted. What? Hearing the voice from behind, Chu Huan turned his head subconsciously. Through the gap of less than 10 centimeters at the end of the door, Chu Huan clearly saw Shu Hongwen, who was anxiously rushing towards the classroom. But before Shu Hongwen finished speaking, the alloy door of the classroom was already closed. Looking at the tightly closed metal door in front of him, Shu Hongwen said to the phone in a deep voice, I didn't catch up, the door is already closed. Fu Wenbo on the other side of the phone asked, where's the spare key? Open the door. After hesitating for a few seconds, Shu Hongwen's voice weakened a little, I didn't bring it, it's in the office. You are really talented, I'll go to your office to get it now. You wait for me, I hope you don't lie down in it. Seeing that Fu Wenbo hung up the phone, Shu Hongwen couldn't help but scratch his head. He looked at his phone suspiciously and couldn't help but mutter. What do you mean? What does it mean to lie in? At the same time, in the classroom, the sloppy expression on Chu Huan's face had disappeared. Unlike yesterday, when Fu Wenbo and Fu Wenbo entered a classroom in this training center, everything was as usual. At this moment, as the door of the classroom in front of him was closed, there was actually no light source in the entire classroom. It can be completely described as reaching out and not seeing 5 fingers. What's the matter? Where's the light? Broken. I'm going. Who knows where the power switch is to turn on the lights? It should be on the wall at the door. Who will open it nearby? ... In the discussion of the students in class 18, some people want to take out their mobile phones. But when these students took out their mobile phones, they found that they could not see the slightest light, as if they had malfunctioned. Damn it, my phone is out of power. I just saw that it's still half charged, why isn't it responding now? FK, me too, I wanted to turn on the flashlight, but the phone didn't respond. Strange, could it be that electronic equipment is blocked in this training hall? During the rustling discussions among the students in class 18, Chu Huan's expression gradually became serious at the door. Yesterday, Chu Huan and Fu Wenbo came to the training hall. Naturally, he knew what the classrooms of the training hall looked like. The environment of the 103 training classroom today is really too abnormal. Under normal circumstances, maybe Chu Huan wouldn't think too much about it. After all, there could be something wrong in the school. But the key is that at the moment when the door of the training classroom was closed, Chu Huan saw Shu Hongwen rushing outside the door, and Shu Hongwen's anxious face. Combined with the current situation, Chu Huan has a mind. This feeling is a bit wrong. Feeling that something was wrong, Chu Huan pulled a hand in the classroom behind him. Not pulling. This situation made Chu Huan's mouth twitch slightly. In addition, a sweet and bloody smell quickly penetrated into Chu Huan's nose. There is also a faint smell of carrion in it. The heavy voice didn't look like a living person at all, but a bit like a beast. It was also when Chu Huan's thought emerged that the dark classroom suddenly became bright. After narrowing his eyes for a second, after getting used to the light, Chu Huan glanced around subconsciously. The next moment, Chu Huan seemed to have discovered something. His eyes suddenly stared, and his face was full of surprise. The reason is simple. At this moment, in this 103 training room, in addition to the awakened students in their 18th class, there is a biting wolf in this training room. Damn it. The school is so big. You just dropped a piercing wolf in the training classroom, aren't you afraid of problems? For a time, Chu Huan's expression became strange. Chu Huan's reaction, although startled, was relatively flat. After all, the biting wolf was killed by Chu Huan himself yesterday. But for other students, the situation was different. Almost at the moment of seeing this piercing wolf, several students in the class who were usually self-proclaimed daring, slumped on the ground with their legs weak, and their faces instantly turned pale. The originally quiet training classroom was like boiling water was poured into an oil pan, and the screams instantly boiled and filled the entire classroom. Chapter 22. Ah, ferocious beast, how can there be a beast in the school? Damn, this is a biting wolf, how could this thing appear in the school's training classroom? Run, run, we have just awakened, and we can't be the opponent of this biting wolf. ... Under the undulating screams of each other, several panicked students quickly backed up and rushed to the door to open the door and escape. When they couldn't open it, some students started kicking the door again. It can be used as a training hall for awakened students to practice in class, and each classroom is constructed of E-grade alloys. Even a silver-level awakened would need a certain amount of time to destroy it. Not to mention these students who have just awakened and haven't even mastered the artifact soul skills. Roar. As if stimulated by the sounds of kicking the door and screaming, the biting wolf in the training classroom suddenly let out a low roar. The fierce voices entered the ears of these students, making the students quiet down in an instant. Looking at the biting wolf, who was already slightly bowed in an offensive posture, every student's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Even the student who had kicked the door at the moment became unable to move. It's over. For a time, these students in Class 18 showed a bit of despair. Even some students had tears in their eyes because of fear. Also, when everyone's attention was focused on the piercing wolf in the distance, the green and vicious eyes of the piercing wolf on the opposite side quickly swept across the students. Roar. A few seconds later, as the front paws slashed twice on the alloy floor, this bone-piercing wolf roared and started straight and fast. The target was directly placed on the few students in Class 18 who were paralyzed on the ground in fright. Seeing the piercing wolf rushing towards him like a madman, the blood of the students who were slumped on the ground seemed to have turned into ice cubes, causing a chill to quickly spread to the heavenly spirits. They wanted to shout loudly, but in panic, the students' throats seemed to be stuck by something, and they couldn't make any sound at all. They could only stare at the piercing wolf getting closer and closer to them. However, just as the piercing wolf jumped up and rushed towards the students who were slumped on the ground, Chu Huan narrowed his eyes. The next moment, Chu Huan rushed out like an arrow from the string and appeared in the air. While dodging in front of this piercing wolf, Chu Huan raised one of his hands and directly clasped the piercing wolf's wolf face. Drink. Muscles tightened while drinking lightly in the mouth, and the powerful force directly pressed the face of this piercing wolf and smashed it to the ground. Boom. Under the powerful force, the moment the head of this biting wolf touched the ground, a loud crash sounded. When the bone-piercing wolf lifted its head from the ground due to the shock of the impact, Chu Huan's right leg kicked the bone-piercing wolf's face like a spring, kicking it upside down and falling to the ground, beyond meters. Looking at Chu Huan, who rushed out instantly and repulsed the piercing wolf, the students in Class 18 stayed where they were as if struck by lightning. Obviously, he was shocked by the strength shown by Chu Huan at this moment. But in the next second, the students in Class 18 who came back to their senses all looked overjoyed. It felt as if someone in despair had caught a straw. However, Chu Huan is not very interested in the situation and mood of the students behind him. Chu Huan frowned slightly when he looked at the biting wolf that shook his head a few meters away. Ha, you don't even feel hurt at all. You know, Chu Huan is a man who has killed hundreds of wolves. Even yesterday, the biting wolves in the ferocious beast secret realm would have been seriously injured when they were hit twice in a row. Why is the biting wolf on the opposite side so painless under the two-hit combo now? Today's events reveal a strange, good-natured beast like the piercing wolf actually appearing in the school. Chu Huan was too lazy to think about it. Since hand-to-hand combat is not enough, there is only zooming in. After taking a light breath, Chu Huan had already mobilized the soul power in his body. At the same time, right in the 103 classrooms. At this moment, across from Chu Huan and the other students in class 18, where is the biting wolf? In the huge classroom, in addition to the students in class 18, there was another boy who seemed to be about the same age as Chu Huan and the others. And this boy was wearing the same T-Online middle school uniform as Chu Huan and others. At this moment, in front of the boy, there is a bell-like device soul floating, and strands of soul power are being continuously introduced into the bell with the boy and then fill the entire room. While constantly manipulating his soul power, the boy seemed to sense something and suddenly opened his eyes with a yawn to look at Chu Huan, who was still leaning against the last door at the moment. Didn't it mean that Zhou Ziqi and Sun Jun, who were only in the first class in the third year of high school, were awakened in advance? Where did this guy come from? The speed is so fast that he can directly repel the piercing wolf. But after a few seconds, the boy said lightly, "Hey, whether it's an awakener or not, in the illusion I created, even an awakener of the same level can't do anything. You're out of luck." Saying that, the boy manipulated more soul power and began to pour into the bell device soul belonging to the boy in front of him. However, before the boy could make further moves, a wave of soul power suddenly appeared. Feeling this wave of soul power, the boy raised his head quickly, his eyes locked on Chu Huan almost instantly. The next second, in the sight of the boy, a strange-looking tool spirit suddenly floated out of Chu Huan's body and suspended in front of Chu Huan. When the trickling soul power began to emerge from Chu Huan's body, a high-pitched musical sound also began to come out from the suona on Chu Huan's chest. Chapter 23. As soon as the music sounded, it quickly reverberated throughout the training classroom. The sound is unique and penetrating. Even the boy had never heard this unique timbre. Looking at the instrument soul originating from Chu Huan, the boy had a hint of doubt on his face. This instrument soul seems to be of the same musical instrument type as me. But what kind of musical instrument? Why is it shaped so strangely? Out of curiosity, the boy couldn't help but take a few more glances. While the boy was looking at it, the sound of music that had originally reverberated in the training room gradually became louder. Suddenly, black notes began to emerge from Chu Huan's suona. A few seconds later, the 5 black coffin lifter phantoms and the conspicuous black coffin appeared in the condensed black notes. As soon as the phantoms of the coffin-carrying people condensed, they began to shake rhythmically with the beat. What the hell is this? Looking at the few shadows jumping like human shadows that appeared because of Chu Huan's tool soul skills, and the huge boxes on the shoulders of the 4 figures behind, the boy's expression was stunned. If you put it in the anime, there must be question marks around the boy's head at this moment. Could it be that this apprentice's tool soul skill is a summoning type? But what are these things being summoned for? Like those stars' tool soul skills, they have the same effect as dancing for fun. For a while, the boy was confused by the few black things that Chu Huan's soul skill created at the moment. But inexplicably, seeing these 5 shadowy movements of lifting the coffin in his eyes, mixed with the music that reverberated throughout the training classroom, the boy actually felt that the swaying dance steps of these 5 shadows, although simple, were somehow magical and touching. While the boys were watching curiously, as the 5 coffin-lifting shadows summoned by Chu Huan's coffin-carrying march approached, the boy suddenly found that these 5 figures were grinning at him in unison. His whole body was as black as coal, but under his grin, there were even 2 rows of snow-white teeth. The kind that shines. It was also when these 5 shadows were printed into the boy's eyes, inexplicably, the boy felt that the smiles of these shadows flickered a bit. Also inexplicably a little intoxicating. Greeted by the smiling faces of these shadows, the boy slowly looked at the coffin on the side as if he had a feeling in his heart. Seeing this, it was completely difficult to take your eyes off the pitch-black coffin. It was also when the boy was caught by the coffins on the shoulders of several dark shadows. The 4 coffin-lifting shadows that were carrying the coffins suddenly squatted down, and then carried the coffins on their shoulders on their thighs. At the same time that the 4 corners were pressed against the coffin, the 4 shadows, together with the shadow in the front holding a staff like a staff, began to dance towards the boy. And every movement is completely consistent with the rhythm of the suona music that reverberates in this training classroom. With the movements of these shadows, the surrounding music became louder. Under such a change, the boy's eyes became more and more concentrated, and he placed it on the coffin and became a little more urgent. Finally, when the shadows slowly lifted the lid of the coffin, the boy finally couldn't hold back and rushed towards the coffin with a sense of urgency. Then he moved his steps to adjust the position of himself and the coffin. Then, he slowly turned his back to the coffin. The next second, after clasping his chest with both hands, the boy's toes jumped slightly. When the body was in the air and maintained the posture of lying back, the boy just lay in the coffin. With the successful entry into the coffin, the boy is like an obsessive-compulsive disorder patient who sees something that is white and neat, and his body is full of relief. Even with a satisfied smile on his face. I almost wrote the word, comfortable, on my face. The whole life of the family is worth it. In this thought, the boy slowly closed his eyes. The 4 coffin-lifting phantoms who twisted left and right to the side and danced around also closed the lid of the coffin intimately and slowly raised it against their shoulders. Boom. It was also at the moment when the black box was resisted by the 4 coffin-carrying shadows on its shoulders when a sound suddenly came from the door of the training classroom. The next second, Fu Wenbo and Xu Hongwen quickly rushed into the room. And when he entered the room, he looked at Chu Huan and the others with bright eyes in the classroom and the Suona floating in front of Chu Huan. As well as, in the training classroom, the 5 jumping phantoms are happily carrying the coffin. Looking at the coffin shrouded in black mist, Fu Wenbo's eyes narrowed suddenly. Damn it, this stinky boy is still using the soul skill. Chapter 24. What it is. Similarly, after entering the training classroom, Xu Hongwen next to Fu Wenbo saw the phantoms and coffins in the distance for the first time. Hearing Xu Hongwen's voice next to him, Fu Wenbo also came to his senses as if he had been awakened. Then, while the spirit power was running, Fu Wenbo appeared in front of the coffin lifting shadows like a teleportation. A group of blue spirit power rushed out of Fu Wenbo's hands and shot at the coffin carrying shadows. However, as Fu Wenbo's hand touched these coffin-lifting phantoms, whether it was Fu Wenbo's hand or the spirit power wrapped around his hands, there was such a little pause that they didn't wear the coffin-lifting phantom directly in front of him. Passed. Can't attack. After being stunned for a moment, Fu Wenbo jumped up and grabbed a few coffins that were carried by the coffin carrier on his shoulders. But just like the talent, the moment Fu Wenbo touched the coffin, his entire hand and Fu Wenbo's body passed through the coffin in the air. Damn it, what kind of ghost weapon skill is this kid, and it can't be interrupted by external force. As he said that, Fu Wenbo quickly turned his head to face Xu Hongwen at the door and said like a pearl. I didn't see Wang Chang here, I guess he's already been put in that coffin. You quickly wake up that kid and let him interrupt his artifact soul skills, otherwise Wang Chang might be a corpse when he comes out. Quote. Seeing Fu Wenbo's nervous appearance, Xu Hongwen was startled, and without further questioning, he suddenly let out a low voice as his soul power surged around him. What? With this low voice, a wave of rapid spread centered on Xu Hongwen and enveloped Chu Huan and other students in Class 18. The next second, in the eyes of Chu Huan and the other Class 18 students, the biting wolf that appeared in the line of sight a second ago, and the surrounding area seemed to slowly dissipate like ink that invaded the water. At the same time, Fu Wenbo, Xu Hongwen and the 5 shadows in the distance that were swaying and jumping to the music were also imprinted in the eyes of everyone. Huh, what's going on here? The sudden change in the scene made Chu Huan stunned for a moment. But before Chu Huan came back to his senses, Fu Wenbo on the side hurriedly said, Chu Huan, quickly interrupt your soul tool skills, otherwise Wang Chang in the coffin will have an accident. Listening to Fu Wenbo's words, Chu Huan's mind flashed, and he had already guessed something faintly. Afterwards, both the soul and soul power of the Suona device suspended in front of Chu Huan were controlled by Chu Huan and returned to the body. Without the continuation of the music, the coffin-carrying phantoms that were dancing happily in front of them also dissipated as quickly as smoke. After the coffin in the air also turned into smoke, a boy who was also wearing the uniform of T-Online Middle School fell from the sky. When the boy fell from the air, he shook his head, and the boy, Wang Chang, who was just talking about Fu Wenbo, looked blankly at Fu Wenbo in front of him and then looked around. What's wrong with me? Hearing this, Fu Wenbo did not respond, but first transferred his soul power into Wang Chang's body. After running for a few laps without finding anything unusual, Fu Wenbo said, Wang Chang, will you agree when I call you? Wang Chang. Chu Huan. Are you here to play Journey to the West with me? At the same time, Chu Huan still doesn't understand the reason for Fu Wenbo's strange behavior. Obviously, he was afraid that the current Wang Chang had already been killed by his own coffin-carrying march and turned into a puppet. In response, Chu Huan said, Mr. Fu, don't ask, it will be fine if the soul skill is interrupted. Yesterday, Chu Huan met a biting wolf with a slightly higher HP, reaching 150 points in the ferocious beast secret realm. After using the tool soul skill, Chu Huan found that the piercing wolf was successfully installed in his coffin, causing the coffin bearer to jump for a long time, but only reduced the blood volume by 100 points. Combined with the introduction of the skills in the system, it is clear that only when the target dies can he be turned into a puppet by his own coffin-carrying march. In Chu Huan's sight, Wang Chang was originally a 6-star awakened apprentice. And the blood volume on the head has only decreased by 70 points. What could be wrong with this situation? Hearing Chu Huan's words, Fu Wenbo breathed a sigh of relief. Then he let go in disgust. Without Fu Wenbo's embrace, Wang Qingji, who had lost his support, fell to the ground with a bang. Facing Fu Wenbo's sudden ruthlessness, he didn't react for a while. Chu Huan, who took this scene into his eyes, raised his brows lightly. Hey, ruthless. After standing up, Fu Wenbo glared at Wang Chang, who had a blank face, and said angrily, What's wrong? I'll come later and you'll be gone. Wang Chang looked puzzled and said, I'll be gone later. Teacher Fu, what do you mean by that? Fu Wenbo rolled his eyes and said to the other students in class 18 who were also bewildered, You go back to the classroom first, Chu Huan stays first. After experiencing the fright of the piercing wolf before, the people in class 18 were already a little stunned. Now they heard Fu Wenbo's words and left one by one blankly. It's just that every face is still a little pale. After all the students left, Chu Huan, who stayed in the training room, looked at the boy who was caught by Fu Wenbo, and then looked at Fu Wenbo and Xu Hongwen. After a few seconds, his eyelids couldn't help but jumped and said, I'll go, Mr. Fu, you guys are playing too much. You actually did this. Up to now, Chu Huan still doesn't understand, there are stinging wolves in this training room. It was arranged by the school or Fu Wenbo and this new practical teacher. Needless to say, the purpose should be to let the students prepare for facing the beasts in this way, and then practice harder in the future. Don't say it, it's quite ingenious. Even playing such a trick is enough of a chicken thief. Chapter 25. Hearing Chu Huan's words, Fu Wenbo suddenly turned his head and glared at Xu Hongwen. It doesn't matter about me, this guy arranged for you to accept this fantasy trial in advance. Xu Hongwen at the door buckled his head and said, Well, if you want to blame me, you must first explain to me what is going on. I still don't understand what happened. Fu Wenbo turned his head to look at Chu Huan and said, Can you tell? Knowing what Fu Wenbo meant, Chu Huan shrugged and said, Whatever, this thing can't be hidden anyway. Tool soul skills can't be hidden. This is true whether it is in the future college entrance examination or after entering the university in the future. Anyway, for Chu Huan, the biggest trump card is his own system, not the tool soul skill. And Chu Huan's skills aren't some weird skills, what's so shameful? But when Fu Wenbo asked himself first, Chu Huan couldn't help but give Fu Wenbo a thumbs up. In the end, it is a teacher, and his tone and character are still reliable. With the approval of Chu Huan, Fu Wenbo said, You saw it just now, the 5 black shadows were summoned by his artifact soul skill. The last time I tried it, I didn't feel at all and was slightly injured by this kid. Quote. Xu Hongwen said in surprise, A 1-star awakened person can actually hurt you. Can't you escape even with your strength? Fu Wenbo shook his head and said, If you want to dodge, you have to know how to dodge. The problem is that the damage of his artifact soul skill is a bit strange. There is no sign at all. It's like it's directly affecting me. There's no way to dodge. Is it a must-know skill of causality? This is rare. After commenting on it, Xu Hongwen continued, What happened to the big black box that had Wang Chang in it just now? Fu Wenbo glanced at Xu Hongwen and said, Don't you think that the size and shape are very similar? Following Fu Wenbo's description and recalling the shape of the box just now, Xu Hongwen said with some uncertainty, Coffin. Ha, Teacher Xu is so smart. At this moment, Chu Huan, who was standing beside him, suddenly interjected and gave Xu Hongwen a thumbs-up compliment. Xu Hongwen, Wang Chang. But for Chu Huan's compliment, Xu Hongwen was not happy at all. Instead, he looked at Chu Huan like a ghost. This FCK, and the artifact soul skills are summoned from the coffin. Is this a sunroom thing? There's something wrong with you, boy. Whose tool soul is so evil? Summoning a coffin. Are you directly sending people to the ground? At this moment, Xu Hongwen felt that his unnecessary knowledge had increased again. Fu Wenbo sighed and said, "That's where the problem arises. Yesterday I took this kid to the secret realm of fierce beasts and found a biting wolf to try it out. The final result of the test was that the biting wolf lay in the thing summoned by this kid for a while and then died." Having said that, Fu Wenbo paused for a while, then glanced at Wang Chang next to him and continued. Moreover, after death, the biting wolf was transformed into a necromantic beast that could be directly manipulated by this kid as a puppet. Xu Hongwen, Wang Chang. Facing what Fu Wenbo said, Xu Hongwen and Wang Chang were immediately shocked. It doesn't matter if you summon the coffin. But now because of the coffin summoned by Chu Huan's artifact soul skill, he can still voluntarily let people lie in it. This is a bit too much. Is this soul skill poisonous? A few seconds later, Wang Chang suddenly reacted, and couldn't help being shocked. Sao, still have such an artifact soul skill. It's too weird. Not only can it directly damage the target, but also transform the target into a puppet. Fu Wenbo took a deep look at Wang Chang and said, "So you know why I said it's too late and you're gone." Hearing this, Wang Chang was stunned for a moment, but his face was still dazed. This stupid boy doesn't even know. Seeing Wang Chang's reaction, Fu Wenbo said quietly, "Did those black phantoms smile at you before?" Wang Chang nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Fu Wenbo continued to ask, "How do you feel?" Wang Chang recalled, "The teeth are very white and neat." Fu Wenbo raised his eyebrows and asked, "Then what?" Wang Chang said as he tried to recall. "Then, for some reason, I suddenly looked at the black box. No, it was a coffin, and then." Having said that, Wang Chang suddenly got stuck. Fu Wenbo took the initiative to say, "Come on, taste it carefully," and then what happened? Facing Fu Wenbo's question, Wang Chang couldn't say why. Because of what happened next, Wang Chang had no impression at all. It's like a blank period after a hangover. I only knew that when I woke up, I saw Fu Wenbo hugging him. Afterwards, looking at Fu Wenbo's meaningful eyes, Wang Qianyan's body trembled violently when he understood. Could it be that I was in that coffin before? Seeing that Wang Chang understood what happened before, Fu Wenbo put a hand on Wang Chang's shoulder to comfort him. "It's okay, it's all over." At this time, Chu Huan on the side also comforted. "That is, anyway, I have to lie down in the future, so I should get familiar with it in advance." Fu Wenbo, Xu Hongwen, Wang Chang. Facing the comforting words of Chu Huan, the three of them fell silent. After a while, Fu Wenbo said with a sullen face, "What nonsense are you talking about? If you can't comfort others, just stand on the side and play by yourself." As soon as these words came out, Wang Chang felt as if he had been shot by an arrow in the chest. Suddenly I feel more depressed. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.